I sort of gasped a little bit because I feel like in all of the conversations we've been having about the NHS is broken and we know about the junior doctors, we've had a lot of that on this show, everybody's been talking about that. This story of GPs balloting to take industrial action has completely blindsided me. And I'm supposed to know about these things. It sort of seems to have come out of nowhere, and I think for lots of viewers it will be like, hang on, this is the surgery that's up my road. I know those people, I see them. And it feels personal. What's going on and where has this come from?
Well, and it's, I don't think it's ever happened before.
No, not for a long
decades
1964,
yeah,
that was the last time.
Or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this ballot started during the middle of June. There was a general election campaign going on, so it was completely obscure for some reason. It went completely under the radar. Completely. Yeah. The ballot closed at noon, and if they do vote for this industrial action, they could, if they follow the recommendation of the BMA, one of the most militant trade unions in the country, I might add, reduce the number of appointments from an average perhaps of 37 or 50 to 25.
Yeah.
And people are already struggling to get to see a GP.
Yeah. It has been under the radar. It might have been the general election caused that, because there's a bit in the NHS is that, you know, not to talk about certain things that affect a general election. But it's in some ways, it's not unusual that if you've got junior doctors, if you've got consultants all in dispute, then at some point, you know, there's going to be other parts of the health service, and the doctors are one of them. But you're right. I mean, I think, you know, the polls show that actually not necessarily against individual doctors, but dissatisfaction with getting appointments is really high, and this isn't going to help the matter at all.
Dr. Hillary was saying that this isn't about the pay of GPs, it's about the overall money going to the
service,
practices, and that the proposal is for that to rise by 1.9%. Now, inflation has been much higher than that this year. The pay review bodies are going to say that pay for people in the health service should be going up by about 5%. So 1.9% does sound really low. How would you pay your reception staff, your kind of wider staff with 1.9%?
Yeah, I mean, how do you do that when there's huge pressures on these GP practices? And you know, Ed, as well, I think the public often think that actually our GPs are full-time employees of, if you like, the NHS. And they are in one sense, but they are contracted to do a job. There's very few proportionally salaried MPs for the NHS. They're they're salaried as businesses, and therefore it's their other costs that they have to pay as well. But I think it's also about pressure of time. You know, I know the average is 37 appointments a day, but in some cases, some GPs are doing 60. And, you know, add to that, you know, the public's concern about having to do online bookings and all of this. You know, I think a lot of the members of the public would just be, you know, exasperated by that.
And they might be doing 60, but how many of those are face-to-face? Are some of those appointments on the telephone?
Does that matter?
I think it does. I think it does. I don't
but
think
it's
you
still
get
time.
Yeah, but I don't think you get to say, if you're somebody who wants to see a GP, they don't particularly want to have a telephone appointment. They'd rather, Caroline, see the GP face-to-face, because the GP can see more.
But when I was an MP and I was living, you know, still living in Doncaster and commuting to London, I'd have loved to be able to have a video appointment or a telephone call. But then there's a time and a place, absolutely, for those in-person, face-to-face calls as well.
Yeah, but there's a new government, Wes Street, a new health secretary. You can't have a fight with the GPs in the first 3 weeks. Don't they have to sort this out?
Really big, really important.
And don't forget, obviously, the Labour government also want to have an increased number of appointments per week. What is it, 40,000 appointments a week they want to increase by? Well, you know, yes, that's in the, you know, the acute hospitals, the inpatients, the elective surgery. But you know what? People are waiting for their appointments, and if it affects appointments at that level, it's a big issue for...
And of course, the thing is, you'll end up going to A&E or your local walk-in centre.
That's the whole point. It'll have such a knock-on effect.
I mean, enormous knock-on effect.
We've already got too many people going to hospital already, and if now they're going to massively contract the amount of appointments they see, it's going to be chaos right at the start of a new government, which has promised it's going to sort this mess out. And it is extraordinary that this just... Again, we've all seemed to have missed it was happening.
Well, and what's interesting is, of course, is that today at around 3 o'clock, Rachel Reeves, our new Chancellor, is going, and it's been, you know, talked about widely already, is going to actually have a statement where she says we've got a £20 billion black hole and we're going to have to cut funding for key services, perhaps, or certainly have to, you know, trim the fat. But there isn't very much fat to trim. And then at the same time, of course, we're then talking about GPs who are saying we might take industrial action. I mean, what do you do? It seems like almost an impossible equation.
This is terrible for a government that's very... This government is very good on coordinating its announcements, and this is very bad timing for them, actually.
Well, look, but I think it also will play to what Rachel Reeves will say this afternoon, is about, you know, the system is broken.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why we've got some of these problems with GPs and other parts of the health service is we actually haven't got enough doctors, whether it's doctors in hospitals or doctors in our GP practices. Our rate of GPs and the amount we train compared to France and Germany is pitifully low. And if you haven't got the doctors there, then you're going to have problems with running the services.
The thing I find is that, because I think one of the big problems is that when we keep talking about the difficulties that all doctors are facing, I think if you are a bright young 18-year-old and you've got the world at your feet and you're about to do your A-levels, do I really want to... You know, it used, and it still is for so many of us, the badge of honour. It is one of the biggest things in your family. You know, I did a speech at UCLan, where I'm Chancellor, and but on the same day, my nephew was graduating as a doctor, and I said, listen, I might be on the telly, but I can tell you right now that none of this matters. In my family, the fact that we have a doctor in our family, it literally fills my heart with so much... I feel like I've achieved something because he's a doctor, right?
Yeah.
But I just worry that sense of absolute enormous pride, that pedestal on which we think he's gone off to do his medical degree, she's going off to be a doctor, that fizz that we feel of it is going. And I think that's a terrible thing, because the more we talk about the problems, the less young people are going to want to do it. Because they'll think, yeah, you might get £150,000 as a GP, but at what cost? I could go off and work in the city, because if you're bright, you can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, the problem about this as well is all the stories, negative stories about the NHS.
Yes.
This is one of them. Actually, how does that affect the workforce who are out there working every day, doing an amazing, fabulous job? And dare I say, despite the problems, every day there are amazing, fantastic things happening across our NHS.
All the time.
And, you know, not only does it affect the workforce that is there, not just doctors and nurses, everybody else who works to deliver our healthcare, but then again, what is the message it sends out to young people who might be thinking of a career, whether it's as nurses, whether it's doctors. So, I mean, it's...
So where is she going to find the money to do this,
To go back to this
Reeves?
BMA thing, I think the strategy BMA is wrong as usual. I thought the strike they had with junior doctors the week before the election was wicked, because they absolutely knew there was no possibility whatsoever of a government that's just about to lose changing the paying conditions. Wicked. Why are they having this strike action knowing that there was going to be an election on July the 4th, knowing almost certainly, unless they can't read, that Labour were going to win by a landslide? Why aren't they going to give this new government a chance?
Yes, well, it's interesting. We had West
because they've got into the habit, the BMA, of going on strike. It's got into their DNA, and it's wicked.
Well, it's interesting. Wes Streeting was on the show last week, our health secretary, and I said to him, you know, because we were actually talking about the junior doctors, not this story.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, he must have known that this was coming, but we didn't, you know, we hadn't tackled it as an issue. But, and I said to him, you know, if there were to be another strike of junior doctors under a Labour government, would that be a failure? He said, absolutely. Any industrial action is a failure of government. So I think, well, they're facing early failure.
Should we talk about this? So today we have the new Chancellor in the House of Commons making a big economic statement. We just had a general election campaign. Institute for Fiscal Studies said there's a conspiracy of silence. Neither big party is owning up to the fact that there's not enough money for public services, taxes will have to rise. And we're going to get a statement today in which the government's going to say it's worse than we thought, public finances are worse, we know the economy's been weak, we're now finding out all this stuff in public spending. They're clearly paving the way for some taxes to go up, but they're also talking about, you know, cutting the Arundel bypass, plans to restore railway lines, the Stonehenge tunnel, new hospitals which are unfunded. Is what's going on today, is this the government genuinely discovering things in the first 2 weeks which they didn't know about, so they can legitimately say it's worse? Or is this the politics of saying, as George Osborne did in 2010, as Gordon Brown did in 1997, it's much worse than we thought, and it's all the fault of the other guys.
It's exactly the same.
Which is it?
It's that. It's exactly that.
Is it only that?
Rachel Reeves said in the Financial Times some weeks before the general election, it's there quite clearly, quite explicitly, there is a 20 billion black hole. She knows that because all the papers have been published by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Now, she will mention various projects today. The figure she's going to talk about today is 20 billion. She knew weeks before the general election.
Andrew, to be fair, our viewers were not studying the detail.
No, but she is saying...
She's the Chancellor. She's going to tell them, here's the fact.
Yeah, she's saying it's much worse than she thought when she made those assessments that we don't need to raise taxes. She knew there was a 20 billion black hole. This is to massage public opinion so she can put taxes up.
I don't think Rachel Reeves or Labour have been unclear about the fact that there's a financial mess that they're inheriting. And it is the case that there are clearly some of these issues that were forerun and they were aware of. But actually, they've come in, and I actually think it's quite healthy. You come in and you take stock and say, you know, were what the previous government was saying actually true and right? There was 2% apparently put aside for the disputes in terms of the doctors. We know the pay review bodies, which is since March, have said it's going to be 5.5%. We know, and I know it, I sat on the Public Accounts Committee for 4 years before I left Parliament. Oh, my goodness me. The amount of big projects that government ran that were overrunning, that were costing more than it was meant to be. I actually think if she sets out today, and let's see what she says today, is that this is the problems, these are the areas, and this is where we've got to get value for money and cut costs. That's a good thing. Now, there are risks with that, because once she lays it out, then she has to say, well, what are you going to do about it? How many projects are you going to cut? Will that affect infrastructure and growth? These will be other questions that will be part of the discussion tomorrow morning, probably when we're back on tomorrow morning. But the fact is she's right to lay it out now, and she's right, I think, in doing that, to lay the ground for budget in the autumn. We'll see. We'll see what she says.
Her whole strategy about eventually cutting tax is about growth. It's all about growth. She's going to reform the planning system, although that's good luck with that, because that's going to take years and years. But she's also now, we see, going to cancel a series of major projects which are about public spending, which would create growth. This is a problem.
The HS2 in Euston is one of the things.
A huge problem. 40 hospitals.
But she has to do something.
Bypasses.
On the 40 hospitals, she's not saying, I'm cancelling them and taking the money away.
No.
She's saying they announced them and they never, ever had the money to
Exactly, that's right.
I think there's two underway.
And we also know, why did we have that earlier election? Because they sussed out after the budget in March, where they cut some taxes, that actually they weren't going to be able to cut any more taxes in the autumn. So they had to get into the election quick, despite that high-risk strategy. And probably
that went well,
they've probably found, the Labour government, going into departments, there's lots of unfunded things. The hospitals issue, 35 billion, that's twice as much as was originally forecast for spend in that area. And have any actually happened?
No.
No.
It's interesting, because I think the Labour Party's tweet maybe is the image that they showed of Keir Starmer being rained on at the Paris Olympics, wearing his sort of hooded coat whilst everybody else is in plastic. And the wording was something like, I don't know if we've got it, can we show it there? And the wording was, preparation is the key to success. Although, you know,
it is the most nerdy photo
Yeah,
ever,
it is a nerdy photo.
Yeah, but I tell you what, he's a guy who knows weather. That clearly, you know, he was prepared with his anorak and his hoodie.
Unlike the Prime Minister, when he launched, the former Prime Minister, when he launched his election campaign, which, of course, what that's about.
Yeah.
But is Rachel Reeves, so she's a new Labour Chancellor. Yeah. They've just been elected, and she's got 4 years. Is fundamentally what she's doing today saying, I'm really sorry, it's worse than we thought. Yeah. We're going to have to spend the next year, 2 years cutting spending or cutting back on projects? Or is she saying, actually, the only way to be an effective Labour government, given what we've inherited, is to raise some taxes to spend more? What's fundamentally, you know,
I think
big choice, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there's two things. I think one is actually being honest with people. We can't pay for everything. And actually, maybe some transparency.
That's unusual for a Labour government.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
unusual
quite
for a Labour government.
It's refreshing for any...
I think the
historic
for any
government to say that,
for a Labour government.
Well, it's an historic Labour victory anyway, but... I think saying, well, we can't do everything, and what should we spend money on? The other thing is, in the autumn, she's got some options, hasn't she, in terms of inheritance tax? Only 4% of estates actually pay inheritance tax. Capital gains tax is another one, and there's plenty of tax release probably. But, you know, and Ed would know probably about that, which aren't worth the paper they're written on in terms of delivery.
It's very hard to get a lot of money from those.
She did say she's not to put up tax on working people, but of course, capital gains tax would affect a lot of people who employ working people, of course. Well, I think what she's trying to do is exactly what the Tories did in 2010, when they came in after Gordon Brown's lot had spent all the money. We know that because the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Liam Byrne, said so in a rather a letter he regretted. He left it for his successor.
We all regretted that letter.
Yeah, absolutely. You all
did.
The letter said, he said to his successor as Chief Secretary, very sorry, we've spent all the money in terms. And the Tories used that...
He didn't say we spent all the money.
There's no money left.
No money left.
To say he didn't say that.
Yeah, but there was no money left, he said, right? Yeah. That's what he said.
Yeah, he actually said there is no money.
There is no money. 5 years, the Tories used that and to continually bash Labour, and they also said that's why we need austerity, and it worked for the Tories, and this is what Rachel Reid is doing. It's the same strategy.
It was
To be
such
fair,
a
I
Tories
remember-
to spend all the money, and we're going to sort it out.
I mean, I can remember in 1997, you know, I mean, the Conservatives were still going on about the winter of discontent, for goodness sake, you know. So, look, this is part of what happens.
never forget it.
Actually, you know, she's taking, you know, she's being pretty brave here in her announcements of what she's going to do today. Let's see what she says and how she's going to show the evidence for what she's saying, because there's plenty of people who say, well, you should have known this, and some things they will.
Well,
But
and
we'll see the
actually,
evidence today.
I mean, back in February, you know, with the green pledges, they were pledging 28 billion on green projects back in February, and then they pulled it.
Yeah.
A year.
Because they knew that actually we want to do this, we can't. And then, of course, now we had Ed Miliband on last week talking about 8 billion, you know, and a massively reduced amount for all the green projects, which are meant to be part of growth.
Yeah, and he also, of course, when he said they were going to create this new public energy body, Great British Energy, that there would be an annual, every year, £300 reduction in people's energy bills.
Well, they are still saying that, aren't they? Or is that not?
No, evaporated last week. They're now saying it might happen for the next election.
But these are some
another
of the
broken
real...
promise, another broken promise.
No, but these are some of the real consequences.
Another broken
The
promise.
election campaign carries on.
It's true.
Well,
it was a very important pledge. It was in people's election leaflets. We will cut your bill, £300 a year every year. No sign of it last week.
Did you spend the weekend studying the press releases of Ed Miliband from last week?
Oh, that's all right then, is it?
Or did you spend the weekend watching British success in the Olympics?
I felt like I'd spent the weekend watching that terrible, boring opening ceremony, which appeared to go on all weekend. I mean, God, how long did it go on for? Oh, my God.
No, I liked it. I think it was different. I liked it.
Tedious.
I mean, that
Endless.
horse was amazing over the
That was
Seine.
incredible.
But it went on and on.
It was. Yeah, it literally wasn't just it wasn't Aintree, was
Thank
it?
God for Celine Dion. She was amazing.
I'd fallen asleep by then.
I would like to say I've had a very frustrating weekend with the Olympics. I was very pleased to see Adam Peaty get his silver.
Yeah,
Kimberly
great.
Woods' bronze in the canoe slalom, superb.
they won.
Andy Murray's tennis match. But, you know,
That was
I'm
heroic.
used to, with the TV coverage, normally you could go on and you could think, I want to spend the day watching the badminton. Or I want to watch the archery, just watch the coverage.
And watch a sport you don't normally know.
It's
That's
not
what I enjoy.
on. If you go on the BBC, there's only 2 sports at a time. They haven't got the rights to all the sports. None of these things are in the background. And then when you watch the coverage and you want to see the sport, they keep doing all these trailer films and interviews about...
And the other thing,
show us the sport.
I don't know if you had the experience. When I did try to go on and watch the opening, because I was at Bruce Springsteen and recovering on Friday, I have to say, and didn't catch up in live
You were with
time.
the boss.
So, yeah, on Thursday night at Wembley last week. But on Saturday, I thought, I'm going to watch the opening ceremony now. And when I went on the iPlayer thing, it wasn't loaded up. So I don't know what is going on there.
Look, the whole point... I mean, I watch a lot of badminton.
Do you?
Every 4 years.
Never saw it about
I'm a massive Gail Ems fan.
Yeah.
Since she got her... Well, I know, Andrew, I knew you wouldn't know.
No,
she was actually on our programme a few weeks ago. She won a silver in badminton for Britain in the Olympics a long time ago.
Great.
I couldn't tell you when, but she was brilliant.
Do you know
And you can't find it on there.
No.
And they keep cutting away the whole time, you know, show us the sport.
I tell you the thing with any opening ceremony is that you will never beat the Queen jumping out of a plane.
No,
you will never, no opening ceremony ever will be able to beat James Bond and the Queen.
And
I mean, it was just the most amazing thing that we had.
All you guys want to talk about is the opening ceremony. It's all about
sport.
the
No,
sport.
I know. Yes, no, exactly. Well, we've got Jonathan Swain's out there this morning. Now, can I just quickly mention something? We've got 2 former Yorkshire MPs, is that right, here?
That's right.
Yes.
Now, what do you make of this advert that has caused, well, I say uproar because of the apostrophe being in the wrong place? Just let's take a look. Do we have it? Let's take a look at this. So this is, yes, let's take the thing away from the bottom so that you can see it. So what do you think is wrong with this, Caroline?
I can't
Can you
read
say
it
it
from
out?
here.
So it says, Garrett int bin.
Get it in bin. Get it in bin.
Or take
What is it? I can't read it.
Get it in bin.
Get it in binned.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't quite make
No,
sense. So
it
there's been uproar because the apostrophe should be after the T and not after the N.
Get it in bin.
Yes, and people have been saying, hang on a minute, it's just quite patronising to Yorkshire people to sort of go down that route of using that kind of vernacular.
In the first place.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah. Well, I'm not.
A bit of an ear bargaining.
I'll leave this. I'll leave this to these two Yorkshire
yeah.
types here. But I mean, but you should get it right if you are going to do it.
And apostrophes in public spaces really rile people.
Yeah.
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
They always find the writing down of vernacular English is always a bit grating.
Yeah.
You can say it,
Yes.
Yeah.
but or hear it.
It looks
to
very-
actually
it
read
looks-
It's an
looks
advert for
Let's take a look
radio
at it
or
again.
TV, I think.
Yeah,
for
it
sound rather than
it
written
just
down.
looks clumsy and ugly.
Also, in my view, it shouldn't say take, it should say tech. And take you don't say take, do you?
There's
If you're
also-
going down the accent route, it's get it in bin and take your litter home. Tech. T-E-K.
And should they be using those sort of cups anyway?
Well,
Well, that's it.
Another-
That's
Isn't that a
it.
more important point?
Another-
Yes, apostrophe outrage across
I
Yorkshire.
always-
it
I
should
always
say
thought
go
the whole-
in recycling
Yeah.
bin.
I thought
I
the
never
whole
drink
thing
coffee
about
out of
it was
those
take
things.
your litter home.
Yeah.
You know, because actually, probably haven't got people to empty the bins.
Well,
That's
we
gonna be
need
cut as
Susanna
well.
here for this conversation because she wants a bin at the end of every road and outside everyone's houses.
And Labour couldn't even commit to that during the election.
We have
Couldn't
to
even
move on.
commit to that.
Have you ever peed in a public swimming pool?
Oh, here
No.
we go. Here we go.
No.
I might have done when I was
No.
five.
Well,
I might have done when I was
I
five.
don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
When
know.
I was
Everybody
five.
says they haven't. Nobody.
Maybe when I
Not
was
as an
five.
adult,
Nobody believes-
no.
Maybe when I
I've
was
done it
five.
as a kid.
Sean
You
says,
both look a little bit. You've
Sean
both got your
said-
body
Sean
language
said-
has
No,
changed.
but I don't go in public.
Sean's
pools.
always worried that the water around him was going to go red because there's that special dye they put in, but it's never happened.
Don't drag me into this. I've never weed in a
Why
pool.
have you, Ed?
What?
Have you?
Clearly he has.
In the
Yes, you
sea?
have.
In the sea?
Well, that's
Yeah.
not accepting the sea either.
Not in a
Who
pool.
in the sea?
rubbish that's got in there from these
If
water
I'd been an
companies.
Olympian, I would have done.
Yeah.
Could
I have
get
in
in
the
the
sea.
film.
It's quite a nice relief.
Stop!
What, a warm pool? Oh, no.
You remind me never to go swimming near you, Sean.
In the sea. In the sea.
No, that doesn't matter. There's
it's fine in
waves,
the
Sean.
sea.
I don't want your...
Loads of people
Detritus
wee in the sea.
waving.
Stop in the sea.
I can't believe we're on television encouraging people to wee in the
The
sea.
only reason is because there's a three-time Olympic gold medal swimmer who has told the Washington Post that actually it's the dirtiest secret in the Olympics is that all Olympic swimmers wee in the pool, all of them, without fail. They all do
The
it.
sea is massive.
Before or after the race?
Whenever they're
During
training,
the race,
everywhere.
they whilst
That's why we're not winning medals.
Well, that is, I know.
If they want to get rid of the weight, I suppose.
The sea is massive.
How about in your slalom canoe? Let's move
go.
on.
Can I just say, Mike on email said, I once got thrown out of our local swimming baths for peeing in the pool.
Quite right.
On reflection, maybe I should have waited until I got off the top diving board.
Oh, my God.
I'll leave you with that image. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you, Andrew.
It's all falling apart.